Hey guys, this is the beginning of chapter 24. We just finished reading our set of chapters that were, we ended with chapter 23. And in the last set of chapters, we know that the guy from the recycling place, the creepy guy that had been trying to figure out where Vigi lived, well, he ran across Ruku. And when the guys had been taking the recycling back, and they'd kind of gotten into it with Kamar and the other guys, and Shredder was the one that caused the trouble, and he told where the girls lived. And we know that in the middle of the night, kind of seemed like he was probably drinking too, but the recycling guy and another guy came in the middle of the night and tried to get the girls, and because of a rule, they escaped just in time, and they went and hid out in a cemetery, and I showed you a little bit about that, and then they were trying to figure out where they were going to eat, and they were promised that they were going to go to a wedding feast. And they had gone to a wedding feast and gotten and watched a little bit. And it was obviously the wedding feast of a wealthy couple. And they were digging all this delicious food out of the garbage dump. And it was talking about how they were ignoring, their muddy caked fingernails and all this stuff. And they just learned to go into survival mode, and the things that used to matter didn't matter so much. And they were competing with a skinny cow. I remember I told you, because the Hindus see the cows as spiritual symbols, they can't really run it off, but they kind of did, because they're at the point where the spiritual symbol doesn't matter. Eating and survival is more important. So anyway, now we're getting ready to start on the next chapter. And we're starting on chapter 24, which is called Believing and Imagining. That was some feast. Muthu wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Now I feel ready for anything. Good, Arul said. We should go and see what's left, if anything, of our stuff. Captain Ruku, Muthu saluted you. Let's march to the bridge and see what we can salvage. You and Kuti led the way, and we arrived at our bridge to find it looked like a battlefield, with our belongings scattered everywhere. A few brightly colored shreds of cloth fluttered gaily where our tents had been. Caught on a piece of iron that stuck out from the concrete wall, a ragged t-shirt hung limp as a flag of surrender. Can't believe they ripped up everything they got their ugly hands on, I said. That t-shirt was ripped up anyway, Muthu shrugged. No big loss there. And they didn't tear up everything. Look, our tarps are here. But you were not consoled. Tears welled in your eyes. No, no, no. Kuti rubbed himself against your legs, and you crouched down and hugged him. I slumped by the bridge wall, right next to you. All gone. You stroked a frayed knot of the rope that had once held our roof together. That's not true, Muthu bent to pick up a tiny bead that glittered near his foot. See this? Maybe we can find some more. You took the bead from him, and your face brightened slowly, like the sun peeking out from behind rain clouds. The two of you started collecting what remained of your beads, while I searched for the hollow in which I had hidden our money. And it was there. Here's the money we saved, I announced. And here's your book. Arul brought it over to me and showed me how the previous night's drizzle had left some pages stuck together. Damp though it was, I pressed it against my chest. It comforted me even more than the money. Paravathi teacher's gift felt like a piece of my dream that I could hold on to, a sign that though we'd lost so much, we'd find a way to go on. You came over to me, rolling a bead between your fingers, and we linked our arms. We can make a nice new home. Muthu patted the tarps. Maybe right here. That old tent was flimsy, and now we've got a chance to make a new one. No, I said. What if the men come back? Yes, the graveyard's safer, Arul said. No one will look for us there. But it'll never be home, Muthu said. This wasn't either, Arul said. Of course it was, Muthu said. So what if it didn't have a fine roof or walls? It's the best place I ever lived in. Except for Ruku and Aka's palace. That palace is imaginary, Arul said. You've never lived there. None of us has. Our palace is a home inside my head, Muthu insisted. And those men can't wreck it, ever. Yes, I said. We'll always have our palace. I went over to him and put an arm around his shoulders. And I promise we'll fix up a home at the graveyard, too. With my toes, I scuffed at the crumbling concrete wall of the bridge. I thought of the money we'd spent trying to make our tent cozy, ruined though the bridge was. There was something magical about living above the shining river. Even on that bleak day, it felt more like home than the dingy apartment where we'd stayed with our parents. I hate leaving too, Muthu, I said, but we have no choice. We have to find work soon. Our money won't last long. Ruku has hardly any beads left, and we can't risk returning to the Himalayas. It's too close to the waste-mart man's place. We don't have to go to the Himalayas, Arul said. Haven't you noticed? There are junk heaps everywhere. Plenty of places we can work. And other waste-mart men. That's right, Aka. Don't worry, Muthu inhaled noisily. This is one big, sweet-smelling city. We know every neighborhood by the scent of its garbage. You'll be an expert, too, really soon. Wonderful, I muttered. My life's aim was to map the city's dumps. We'll be all right, Arul said. We can buy more beads, and you can try to make a go of Ruku's necklace business like you wanted. After all, it's thanks to you and her that we've still got any money left. Yes, I said, glad that Arul had finally agreed we needed to do more with your bead business. While the two of us work at the dump, you two can get more beads, Arul said. But first, let's drop our stuff off at the graveyard. As we walked away, you and Muthu started playing a game, tossing a bit of concrete into the air like a ball and trying to catch it again before it fell. Kuti was following along, his nose moving up and down. I watched, glad you were staying so strong, although our lives kept going up and down like the broken concrete bit you were tossing and catching. Candles in the Dark, Chapter 25. Arul didn't lead us straight back to the graveyard. He took us down a street we hadn't seen before. There's a church right by here, Arul said. Let's go there and buy a candle to give thanks to God. Thanks, Muthu stared at him. For what? I couldn't believe my ears either. You're thanking God the waste man took everything we had? The waste man didn't take everything we had, Arul said. He threaded my free hand through one of his and reached out for you with his other hand. See, Arul said. And I saw. We stood in a circle linked together like an unbreakable necklace. No dogs allowed, Arul said when we arrived at the church. Can you get him to stay here and wait for us, Ruku? Wait, you patted his head. Wait. We'll be right back, Kuti, I said. Look after our stuff. Because surely our stuff is so precious, anyone who sees it would want to steal it, Muthu joked, as we laid down the bundle of things we'd salvaged from the bridge. As Arul shut the church door behind us, Kuti whined softly, but you didn't seem to hear him. You and I had only seen churches from the outside. Inside, the church was dark and quiet. Faint streams of light danced in through rainbow-colored windows. Straight ahead, instead of a stone image of a god or a goddess, hung a wooden cross with a carved figure of Yesu, bleeding, with thorns wound around his head. Owie, you whispered. Owie. It's just a statue, Ruku, I whispered back. It's not alive. It's God, Arul said in a reverent tone. Then he led us to a place where rows of candles were flickering. He dropped a coin into a box and lit a candle. We thank Yesu and Mary Amma, he explained, by lighting candles, and we pray they'll keep us safe. Isn't it enough if we just pray, I said? Must we actually burn our money? Muthu chuckled. Arul placed his candle beside the others. You watched us intently as you made your bead necklaces. Then he held the candle out to you. Careful, Ruku, that flame can give you an owie, I said. Even though I knew how good you were with your hands, I couldn't help warning you. After all, you'd never held a burning candle before. Worrying about your safety was a habit I couldn't cure, and I hoped I didn't sound bossy. Wax strips and it's hot. Arul placed his hands over yours so you were holding the candle together. I watched you set it in place. Again, you said. Muthu and I flopped down on a smooth wooden bench, and I watched Arul let you by and light one more candle and then another. Your hand trembled slightly, but your gaze was steady with concentration, your tongue between your teeth. Enough, I suggested, but you ignored me. She's hearing the voice of God, Arul whispered. Too bad she can't hear my voice. Telling her to stop spending all our money on candles, I whispered to Muthu. Soon she won't have any money left. But you were so in awe that I decided not to argue. You seemed to melt right into the moment, kneeling before the candles, your eyes fixed on the moving flames. And they were so beautiful, those lit flames dancing in that still, silent church, dancing like they could hear music, like they were alive, alive the way you were alive, alive right there, right then, not worried about what might happen in a few hours or days, not remembering what had happened before. I heard a sudden snap, the sound breaking my, but not your, reverie. A kind-looking woman who must have been watching us the whole time had snapped open her handbag and started rifling through it. Our eyes met. We're not beggars. I assumed she was looking to give us some change. It's not money. She held out a small rectangular card. Can you read? Of course. I snatched the card out of her hands and read it out loud to prove I wasn't lying. Dr. Selena Pinto, Director, Safe Home for Working Children. Below that was an address, a number, and a name of a street that sounded familiar, a street I remembered in the nicer part of town. I'm Selena Auntie, she said. I run a home for children and help place them in schools to learn a trade. School? My excited shout echoed through the church. At last I found a person who could fulfill my dreams. We don't need for free stuff, Arul grunted. We work. Our children work, she said. We pay for what I provide by working for me. They pay for what I provide by working for me. Keeping the place clean, obeying my rules. No smoking, no lying, no stealing. Stealing? A man wearing a log robe entered through a door I hadn't seen right by the altar. He glanced down at us anxiously. These strays are trying to steal, Dr. Selena? They're not stealing, Father. They're lighting candles, Selena Auntie started to explain. But the boys didn't wait to hear any more. Come on, Akka. Muthu scampered out of the church. Arul pulled you out, and I followed. You blinked sulkily in the sunshine that had briefly broken through the clouds. Now you want to find another church boss? Muthu said to Arul. So we can give thanks? This priest didn't accuse us of stealing and send us to a policeman? Priests don't accuse kids who are in God's house, Arul said, but he didn't sound very certain. Well, it's a good thing that priest showed up, I said, or we'd have spent every last coin on candles. Did you see the faith on Riku's face? Arul said. Her soul's going to heaven for sure with mine. Good for your souls, I said, but can we please use what's left of our money to take care of our stomachs too? Chapter 26, Pretend Princesses. Silver pins of rain fell around us as we left the church. Guys, very good metaphor right there. I cast an uneasy glance at the sky. The rainy season had started, and though it was only drizzling now, in the days ahead, we'd face many downpours. Some years, the monsoon was terrible, and it poured nonstop. Tea? You scratched at a mosquito bite on your elbow. Tea. That's a good idea, Ruku. Let's visit Tea Shop Auntie. Maybe she even has some beads left. I told the boys about Tea Shop Auntie, and after agreeing to meet back at the graveyard, we parted ways. The boys went to find a new Waysmart man, and you and I and Kuti walked toward the tea shop. We ran around the back, knocking hesitantly on the back door, and a smiling Tea Shop Auntie came to greet us. Fiji, I wondered how you were getting on. And Ruku, you look so much taller, standing so straight and nice. Ruku looks nice, you agreed, holding your chin even higher than before. It's good to see you again, Auntie, I said. Stay there a moment and I'll bring you a cup of tea. Although Auntie sounded genuinely pleased to see us again, she didn't invite us into her kitchen. Not that I blamed her, given how scruffy we'd become. In a few minutes, Tea Shop Auntie returned with 2 styrofoam cups filled with steaming milky tea. Now tell me, Vijay, she said as we blew on our tea to cool it. How are you doing? My friends and I sell trash to make ends meet, I said. But Ruku makes necklaces like you taught her to, and sells them. Only we've run out of beads. Maybe borrow some more, if you have some. Of course, Tea Shop Auntie disappeared into her kitchen again and emerged with a small package of beads. Many fewer and not as pretty as the first set she'd given us, but enough to get you going again. I kept these for you, Ruku, hoping you'd come back. Beads! You pressed the bag so hard its plastic crinkled. Beads for Ruku! We'll pay you for them by the end of the week, I said. Nonsense. It's a gift. Anyway, we'll be gone by the end of the week. I'm glad you visited because I wanted to tell you we're moving out of the city. Moving out? I echoed. It wasn't like we'd known her that well, but still, she was the only motherly person we'd met in the city. I'm sorry to hear that, Auntie. Don't be sorry. My husband's elder brother wants him to help back in our village, and I'm happy to go. You sneezed, and at the sound, Tea Shop Auntie gave us one more gift, a packet of yellow powder. Mix some of this in with your milk every day, she advised. It's a mixture of turmeric and some other medicinal powders. It'll help keep you from falling ill. The monsoon will get worse soon. Thanks, Auntie. I didn't bother pointing out that we had no money for milk. We could mix the powder with water instead. A man's voice called from the front of the shop. Abruptly, Tea Shop Auntie cut off our chatter. So nice to see you girls one last time. Good luck. After we left the tea shop, you and I wandered along looking for a place to make your necklaces. Makeshift stalls stocked with fireworks had sprung up along the sidewalks, and seeing them, I realized that Diwali festival was coming up. Diwali was your least favorite festival. You hated noisy celebrations with people setting off fireworks at every street corner. We found a park and settled down on a bench under a large tree. Those thick branches gave us some shelter from the drizzle. I found a large plastic bottle and stuck it in the ground to collect rainwater for us to drink. At least I would have one less worry during the rainy season. We could get our drinking water straight from the sky. Kuti nosed through a small mound of garbage searching for a scrap to eat, his coat glistening. Ruku, I said, will you teach me to make necklaces? You weren't a good teacher, or maybe I wasn't a good student. I tried watching and imitating what you did, but it took me forever just to string a few beads. Unlike you, I was clumsy with my hands. Beads slipped and rolled away at my touch, and I couldn't make the complicated knots and loops you gave your necklaces a finished look. I was scrabbling around trying to pick up some beads I'd spilled when I heard a girl's voice behind me. Want this? A girl stood before us, her school uniform visible beneath her transparent raincoat. A khaki school satchel was hanging off her shoulder. Want this? She repeated, waving a package at us. Take it, please. I looked at the picture of the pretty orange cream cookies on the cover of the package. If I opened my mouth, I was sure I'd drool worse than Kuti. My mother said I mustn't give money to beggars, the girl rattled on, but she said food was okay. I scowled at the girl. Did you hear us beg? No, she knit her brows together. So you're not beggars, but you're poor for sure. I couldn't argue with that. Giving food to poor children is a good thing, she smiled, confident and pleased with herself again. So here are some cookies for you. You sneezed, wiped your nose on your sleeve, and continued with your beadwork. Come on, the girl coaxed. Take them. Find someone else, I gave her my haughtiest look. Please, I need to do some good deed every day, teacher said. And I didn't get to do one yesterday, and I couldn't lie, and my best friend Mina did 2 yesterday. And if I can't do one today, she'll gloat. So please, please. She looked so desperate waving that cookie package. She was the begging one, not me. Fine, I said. Thank you, thank you. She shoved the cookies into my hands and darted off. I turned the cookie package around in my hands, feeling like a princess who just granted a favor to the pitiful subject. Chapter 27. Hungry Ghost. After a while, we'd finished 2 simple necklaces, and I'd finished half. We managed to sell one of yours, but for a pitiful sum of money. I tried not to be too disappointed. Surely our bead sales would pick up again once we had bigger stock of necklaces to show. Let's head back, I said. It looks like it's letting up a bit. Pale sunshine poked through a break in the clouds as we walked back to the graveyard. It hardly ever rained all day and all night, even at the peak of the rainy season. But although the rain had been light, we stayed out so long that our clothes were wet through. I hoped the sun would soon dry us. We had no change of clothes. At the graveyard, Cootie ran to greet the boys who were waiting for us. Any luck, I asked. Not really, a rule said. We went all the way to a waste mart I'd seen before, but it's gone. They've bulldozed the slums in that part of the city to build a shopping complex. Speaking of building, we found that this great place to build a new shelter. Muthu showed me a grave that was wider than the rest, beneath a banyan tree, and a nice plastic tablecloth. Not so nice, I thought. The tablecloth stank like the garbage they'd rescued it from. The only thing that was great was how cheerful Muthu sounded. The boys suggested we build a tent around the large grave, using it as the floor of our shelter because it was raised above the soggy ground. You and Muthu dragged some fallen branches over to use as tent poles. We stuck them as deep into the ground as we could. We used one tarp as a roof, tying its four corners to the tops of the tent pole branches with ropes the boys had scrounged up. Once our roof was up, we pulled the other tarp around the poles, securing it as best we could to make 3 flimsy walls. We hung the tablecloth across the side that was still open to make a flappy door. We found these 3 bits of tires to use as pillows, Arul said. I don't need one, and later we can get new mats. As you and Muthu arranged the pieces of tire in our shelter, you doubled over in a coughing fit. I quickly mixed the powder Tea Shop Auntie had given us with rainwater I'd collected. Arul and I set good examples by drinking some of the bitter liquid, but Muthu made a huge fuss. Tastes worse than poison, he sputtered, swallowing it only after I promised to reward him with a cookie. And I couldn't get you to swallow more than a mouthful. You spat out the first sip and then refused even to eat or drink anything else. Not even the bananas Arul had brought or our cookies. Can't be good for us, Muthu declared, if it's made Ruku lose her appetite. We squeezed into our new sleeping quarters. I was almost happy it was so cramped because I was grateful for the warmth. Our damp clothes made us feel chilly, and because, though I knew Arul was right, that we had nothing to fear from the dead, a part of me was still scared a ghost might float by. Ghosts didn't visit, but swarms of mosquitoes did, feasting on us and droning loudly in our ears. Nice lullaby, Muthu said. When we move out of this place, I'll miss our musical entertainment. Tomorrow, we'll buy some mosquito repellent, Arul promised. Too tired to swat at the hungry mosquitoes, I dozed off, only to be awakened by the sound of footsteps. Someone was moving around in the graveyard. Had the way smart man found us? Or was it a ghost? I held on to Kuti so he wouldn't give away our hiding place. His hair was on end as he stood alert. There's nothing here, it was a rasping voice I didn't recognize. A boy. Definitely. Not the way smart man. This place is nice and peaceful and deserted. Now let's go back. I'm telling you, this place is haunted, came another boy's voice. I saw a ghost moving near that banyan tree yesterday evening when I was cycling by. Arul sat up. He'd heard the approaching voices too. A twig snapped so loudly it roused you and Muthu. Hungry, you moaned. Hungry. Shh, I whispered. Shh, please, Ruku. Did you hear that? A voice said. I stiffened. Didn't hear anything. The other boy was trying to sound nonchalant, but his voice trembled. Hungry, you wailed again. Hungry. Ghost? The second voice yelped. Ghost! Hungry, you shrieked. Hungry! We heard the boys thrashing through the undergrowth, twigs snapping as they rushed by, away from us, though, through the darkness. Muthu's shoulders shook with suppressed laughter. I heard the boys call out for God's protection and dashed away, raising a racket as they stumbled through the dark graveyard. Muthu couldn't control his laughter anymore. It burst out of him, but he did his best to sound like a demonic villain. Harul and I set up, gave in to our laughter too. When we finally stopped roaring, tears were running down our cheeks. But then you tired yourself out. Sorry, I hiccuped, finally, finding the bananas you'd refused to eat that evening and handing me one. Those boys were just too funny. Great work, Ruku. Arul patted you on the back. You just made this graveyard even safer than it was before. What were they up to? I said, daring each other to explore a haunted graveyard. Rich boys for sure, Arul said. You have to be rich to waste time going on escapades at night instead of catching up on precious sleep.